Hi there. I decided I'll do this one in English because it's good practice. Anyway, I just listened to kind of a motivational video on the internet. Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's kind of motivating, and you can definitely question it if it's. But I sense that the attitude and what you do about your hours on a daily basis is really important. So that's why I'm a bit sick, if you hear it. That's why I decided that it's not the 10th video that I'm doing that will be the best one, and not the 110th either. It's about probably the 10,000th video that will be a good one, and so just practice in some sense. Well, the question is, as always, what should I talk about? What can I talk about? And what is relevant to talk about? And I come back to these my sort of fundamental values that I have just now, right now, and it's about our civilization and its progress, and that's what I think is the only thing worth focusing on. And I think in a time in our history when we can afford to discuss that a lot, because that's probably among the best time investments that we can do in our daily lives, because we have done so much else to make things efficient in our society, and so we have more time left. So I think the discussion in itself is enormously important. And the question is then, what can we do to accelerate our civilization's progress? And it's about motivating. I think about motivating our civilization. That's part of my purpose. And my purpose is actually I formulated it like this, word by word. My purpose is to motivate our civilization in order to accelerate our civilization's advancement in any area of human existence. I told myself that kind of 10 times a day for several months. I think it was a year ago. Just to imprint it, sort of. And I wanted to be, I thought that it was a good idea, and it stuck with me since then. And because I was so sure about that is what is important for me, to make our civilization better for the people and anyone who is on the planet, so to speak. And so my point is, in all the things that are happening in the world now, I should be honest to say that I'm not sure about what exactly all the people out there are doing. I'm not saying it in a disrespectful way. I'm more like I'm genuinely wonder what all the time people have is put on, and not to judge their lives. It's not about that. It's about sort of economic. What does it take to withhold the civilization that we have, and how can we automate those things that could be replaced by robots, basically, and how does that influence our economy and what we see as money and progress and growth and whatever it is. And I think that we're in a place in society when too many people are focusing on growth, and I try to understand what growth is, but we forget that growth comes from a conversation about what is of value doing, and without that conversation we're lost, and that conversation will be forced upon us. I could be delusional about this towards sort of bias, because that's my role in, I see myself as having a role in filling that gap and having that discussion, but I also think that that was more and more happening more and more in our society today. We're not discussing these things, and so that's sort of my role, to enlighten people, so to speak. That's the discussion. And of course I could be naive and narcissistic to think that, well, who am I to think that I have that essential thing to contribute to our civilization, the key thing, why we die among our people. But that's I have biases in my brain. I may be wrong, but that's the conclusion I can make, and that's why I am aiming at that. And I would be delighted if someone could correct me if I'm wrong, because maybe I am. And I try to see counter arguments, but that's kind of my conclusion, and I want to make it more sure. So, and if I'm wrong, I'm glad. If that it's the case, I don't want to be delusional. But at the same time, I'm very try to be firm about this. I am a person who think things through very thoroughly, and that doesn't mean that I am right, but it hides the probability for being right. So if I should try to develop my speaking skills and skills in bringing up things that is of importance, well, I think that the academic approach to things are good in many ways. The philosophical question we could put aside for a moment. We could talk about those too, but first of all, I just want to talk about this. What should we call it? These issues about what does our civilization need, and the enlightenment basis of our understanding of the universe is a good one. It's and the key thing here is to, I don't know why scientists aren't sure on what's necessary for people to be happy than they are, but maybe they are, but no one knows about it. But I think that I'm quite convinced that, sure, diet and exercise and sleeping and all those stuff, they're sort of important for well-being and your thoughts and so on, but what even more important is probably your friendships or your socializing. Not on friendship, but your social connections. That doesn't mean, so for happiness is one thing you can optimize for is happiness, of course, but that's not the only thing. I think that's a key thing too. That's one of the basic thing in human progress and in civilizational progress, to make people more happy. I think that's sort of, who could disagree about that? How can we scientifically pinpoint, like, those are the things that make someone happen? If some scientists know exactly what it is and have done science on it, well, I'm glad to hear what it could be. But I do think that think that relationships is a key thing, but good relationships. What does good relationship means? It means that people behave in a way towards each other that is good, that make people happy. So the follow-up question is how. Well, I don't think that's an easy question to solve, because behaving in a good way, that's one thing, and I think that's solvable. But what about even having relationships? And I don't mean particularly like romantic relationships. I mean any type of relationships. And I do think that most of the relationships are very shallow in especially for young people, due to the internet and stuff. They're looking up things, but they feel that they're not included in the debate, in the discussion, and I think that's loneliness is on the rise, and people said it multiple times, and that is true. People are more lonely today. I think it's especially, I may be wrong, but I think it's more prevalent for young people like myself, and ages from, well, I don't know where, I don't know exactly where, if it's 25 and below, or 30 or below, or 20 or below. I think it's, like for me, for example, I'm born 95, so I'm pretty much, since I don't know, from 5th to 9th grade, there were different types of social media things, but in the end of it, it was more and more Facebook, so that's sort of the main thing. So I'm definitely grown up in that space, and so I think that when I'm 22, soon 23, and I think, well, maybe I'm the earlier. I think I'm in the earlier side. I'm not sure if it's about in the 30s, but anyway, that's not the point. But even though it's important to make an argument about whether it's due to the internet and the social media landscape, because that could be the case, and we need science on that. But what is missing is probably a discussion where people feel that they are having a genuine discussion that is moving somewhere, because, well, the saying the blind is leading the blind, I think that's more prevalent in our age than anyway before. I think we're actually not even talking about what life is and what we're going to do about it. That's the most fundamental question that exists. What is life, and what are you going to do about it? I mean, you have a life dumped in your knee, and you have to do something about it. And that's the same thing for everyone. And we're always dependent on each other. So that thing that you've dumped in your knee, well, it's dependent on what other people figure out that they want to do with that thing. And since that's the collective decision, it's anywhere in our time where that discussion can take place without a force of start to do something. We have time to think about it, and we should use that space. And the only thing that's preventing me from making people take this discussion is actually being out on the internet, which, well, to be honest, when I'm doing these videos, so far I think I mentioned in the beginning of these videos that I didn't know really if this would be the first video that first video would be one that I would really post. But I tried to open my mind to the thought that, well, this could be the first video, and to be honest, I've not posted any of these videos until this point. I think this is maybe 7th video, I don't know, 6th. and So my issue is actually being out there and saying what I actually think and writing what I actually think. And I've not really done that. I've been on the internet. I've been on LinkedIn and reached out to people, because that's in sort of in line with my what I do for a living, or at least trying to do while I'm studying. Part of a startup company, sort of. I'm doing some LinkedIn things and reaching out to people, but I've never written anything really about what I think about these deep questions. Only on 16 Personalities website, I enjoy that test, the Myers-Briggs. It's not 100% scientific. It's definitely not, but it helps a lot of people and helps me, and to some degree at least. But anyway, the forum for discussion there I raised one of these questions. Some people responded, and I didn't. Well, I appreciated some of their responses, but anyway, I need to be more in the public debate and say these type of things that I am thinking about, because I think it's essential for our civilization and our advancement to the future, in whatever way it may be taking place. And so, what I could do is discussing several things here. We're not talking to you guys, but one thing is what should we do? What should I speak as if this was a live video? Or should I speak about the method that I have to use in order to be part of that? And I think it's a point when I'm at a point in trust of this video, and I think more comfortable, so I think I can get more personal about this. And I think being genuine is sort of a ground principle that I value very highly. And I was unsure if I should do that really. If I thought about that, maybe it would be too much of a diary, so to speak, video diary, which I could have done and it would have been valuable, but it would be an obstacle for me to post if I were to be too personal. But I don't think that's an issue. I actually think that it could be, at least now when I'm more comfortable, I think that it could be easier for me to express my deeper thoughts and, well, really to connect, even though no one is listening now at this point when I'm recording. But I still think it's easier to connect and develop my thoughts if I'm more genuine and think about my personal things. Not maybe I won't go to the most personal things, but for starters, about this, why I was thinking about the content of what I should preach about, or the method of what I personally should do in order to reach, in order to actually put that content out towards people. And I think the second thing is more personal, and I actually want to discuss that due to the argument I just put forward previously. And so what should I do to get out there? I've been listening to some sort of influencers in Sweden, or of course before in the United States, lots of different people can. But the main thing I realized after a while, there are people in Sweden who are talking about this too, and I really admire it's mainly on YouTube, by the way, but I really admire that they're taking this discussion. But I still think that I have something to contribute, and whether that's an accurate diagnosis, if I see this key thing that I hold so precious as more of a key thing than it really is, I still don't know. As I said before, I'm full of biases and so forth, and oops, I just have to, sorry, oops, sorry. let there be light. No, I was joking. So, putting out content, how should I do it, blah blah. I totally forgot where I was, but yeah, sort of self-criticizing, or um, I just have to write something down. Sorry, I just come. Sorry, I just have to. Mm, where should I put it? Sorry, but so that's great. Okay, so um, where were I? So yes, I think that doing that, what I have to do in order to actually, you may question why don't I just post a YouTube video and try to become famous and try to express my thoughts on Facebook and other places. I think I am too afraid. So this is sort of personal, but I'm sort of reserved. I'm not just someone who posts something. I'm very reserved in many ways. That's why I've been thinking about the website called. It's an app to Medium, I think it's called. I've been reading some things there, and I'm contemplating if I should start writing things there, because it's easier to write and it's not as personal as expressing yourself in your video. It's not as it's easier, and it's so it's has lots of so yeah. I actually think that's a terrific idea. Of course, I won't have that many followers. I actually have an account there because I just, by an accident, I started to read there, and I actually was about to start writing there, but I never really did. So, actually, in recording this video, I'm coming up with these ideas that I actually should do it. I get remembered that. I get reminded. That's the word. Reminded that that's really a good idea to do, and to start write, because video, and it's not as, even though you can see my name, I'm not. It's not like you go out on Facebook and post a comment and see how many likes. Even though you get likes on Medium, but Medium is not an established platform for social bragging, so to speak, which I tend to think that, and it's a longer format in Medium. It's about more personal thoughts, and it's more space, and it's not the closest friends, and it's more to the public, so to speak, and it's not as I don't find the word, but it's not as revealing as YouTube. I don't, revealing is not the right word, but you get my point. It's not as intimate. It's not as brutal in its response to. You're not as vulnerable, so to speak. But yeah, so I'll start to do that. That's actually huge, and I should put it on sort of to-do list, like next week. Next thing. I should write it down right now here on this thing. Do Medium articles as first, what should I call it, first influencer step. Yeah, so I'm not sure if I'd said that, but actually being an influencer, I think that's sort of a prerequisite, if that's the right word, to being someone who impacts society and actually do something that's worth having in this civilization, having any impact in any way. So yeah, influencer, I use that word, and that's what I actually had to become, I guess. Okay, so being more personal, talking about influencing. When you remember I said that my purpose is to motivate our civilization in order to accelerate our civilization and advancement in any area of human existence. I had 3 of those, 3 things that I repeated 10 times, I think, during my morning walk. And one was my purpose. The other thing was actually about just this influencer thing, and I actually said, in Swedish it would be, I can say my purpose I had in English, and this thing I had in Swedish, which was now speaking Swedish. Jag vill bli världens största influencer, accelerera civilisationens framåtskridande och avancera till rymden. Which meaning, in English, I want to be the world's largest influencer, accelerate our civilization's advancement and acceleration and advance into space or something like that. So, and I actually left out after a while, because I noticed that it's a bias to be too narcissistic, or what Charlie Munger calls excessive self-regard and optimism. It's 2 biases. One is excessive self-regard, and the other one is sort of optimism. And especially the first one, self thing, I wanted to minimize. So I left out. I want to be, I have said, world's largest influencer, accelerate. Meaning maybe I'm not the one who's going to be the largest influencer. Maybe I'll have a role in. Maybe I will just have a role in influencing the influencer, so to speak, and that, because I still think that the influencer thing is something that will prevail, and that is the key thing. And it has always been there's always been influencers, so to speak. I mean, power has always been power. I mean, the Pope had power, and Pope had huge implications for our society, and Alexander the Great had huge implication, and Mahatma Gandhi, or anyone who have, who great people have done big things, have always been they've always been famous and actually influencer, but it's only in the recent year we use it for the internet influencers. But every great author is an influencer, even though we don't name it that. So I think if you should be a big part of today's society, it's being an influencer actually. And I don't think it will be as much in written form as it has been, because human interaction is like face to face, much better. So maybe there are some advantages to written language because you can skip better. You can use your visual. You can use your visual eyes to search through information, and you don't have to succumb to the rhythm of the other people's language. And you can skip much better. You can't see a speech in the same way, and visual interpretation is a different thing than, like, if you have a book and you want to pick out the most central part and you have a table of contents, then you can pick and choose in a very good way. But in a video you can't do that, even though I say it's 10 hours long. How are you going to find the most essential parts? Well, you can't skim it. You can't like you can't flip through. You can't. Of course, you can have a table of contents, but that table of contents will actually be, well, it could be in like sort of listening form. But so anyway, that's an interesting discussion, but I digress. What was I talking about? Yes, writing. What I should do. Medium. That was so I thought do a Medium article, so that I can be an influencer. That's what I wrote down as a thing that I have to do in order to be to do what I want in life. Oh no, shit! I'm feeling that I'm going to be more sick, but okay, that's actually a really good pinpoint that I started. So it's a really good thing to start with, writing sort of articles and so on Medium. Another thing that I would really want to do with it, I have to reach out to some of these influencers, whether it's especially Swedish one, because that would make me an opportunity to reach out to them. And since I'm studying at Stockholm School of Economics, I think I have something to say. And especially there are two people really that I influencer that I have seen in Sweden that is of some value. The one is, I think, is Nassim Hadidi, sort of in a person, guy who grown up in Sweden, I think, and Henrik Jönsson is one other person, and I'm not taking any political side, but I think that both those people's, even I heard yesterday that this Henrik Jönsson person is actually responding to every email he gets. So if I'm rushing, so I actually have an opportunity to get an answer from him, and actually an opportunity to talk with him. Actually, that's sort of a that would be actually quite amazing if that happened, but also and thrilling, and it's sort of scary. But if I actually get that, so it's really good to think about, because I could actually get that if I say I'm a student at Stockholm School of Economics, and I think these things are interesting. Of course, I could. Actually think that I could have some possibility to have, even though he uses big famous people, but not necessarily. And I do think that he has a, well, I could frame it in, well, it's could be a great opportunity. But anyway, I think I have to. So those two things, reaching out to, and yeah. I should write it here. Reach out, Jens and Nassim Mudiri. So that's two great points. Anyway, so goodbye right now, but yeah, I will continue to do this. Arnold Schwarzenegger like reps and said, yeah, go it. 24 hours a day, 16 awake, sort of.